What up, baby? Episode 122. Let's address it right away. You're clicking on to Spotify, you're clicking on to Apple Podcasts, and it's like, damn, it's been months since WAKE and RAKE had an episode come out. It's been a while. Things have changed a lot. Here's the deal. I'm going to use this as a soundboard. Okay. When we first started this podcast, first it was me and Willie. We went through a lot of changes. Then, Willie's responsibilities with the Red Sox kicked up a notch. I tried going solo for a while. I was thinking, all right, here's an opportunity to get guests, do film breakdowns. The reality is Willie's responsibilities increased because he's an absolute super stud. My responsibilities increased at my current occupation with CBS. And so the reality is that the time it takes to produce an entire show on a weekly basis, multiple episodes, it is a tall task, especially during football season. For me, when you work at CBS, football season is an absolute grind. So I could bore you with all the excuses in the world, but the reality is that my idea is to use this podcast because we've spent too much time and we've put too much into this podcast and just let it die. And we've gone through a ton of changes. So if you're still rocking with us after all this time, I appreciate you. If you're not tired of this voice yet, if you're still clicking onto our episodes, my goal, I used to make a lot of promises. I used to be like, all right, we're going to get guests. We're going to do X, Y, Z. I'm going to come on here when I want to. And that's the reality of it. I've been waking up in the morning and turning on MLB Network and turning on different baseball episodes. And I'm like, man, I think we at the WAKE and RAKE podcast still have something to provide to the discourse across Major League Baseball. So it's been a couple of months, but my idea is, again, to use the WAKE and RAKE podcast as a soundboard. A lot of you guys follow me on Twitter for the random notes, the random nuggets. That'll continue. Again, if you're still with us, right on. If you're not, I'm not going to do as much promotional stuff as I have in the past. I used to spend hours upon hours producing this podcast, hosting this podcast. Again, I just flat don't have the time as I used to. But again, appreciate you guys tuning in. WAKE and RAKE podcast. Here we are. Let's transition into this new phase. But first, BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything sports betting. Every stat, matchup breakdown, and even live odds and spreads to bet on during games, with the largest catalog of odds on everything from football, MLB playoffs, NHL, NBA to political props. When the game's over, head on over to our online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker, or unwind with one of our over 150 slots games. Head to the website today to get in on the action with America's most trusted site for online wagering. BetOnline, the game starts here. Last thing I'll say is I really wanted this to be like A+ production, at least when Willie and I first started doing this, when we were with CBS and we kind of went off on our own. The more I've listened, podcasts, I think podcasts are better when they're raw and organic. And so I used to want to really button this thing up. I think it's going to be a little bit more random, I guess. A little bit more Wild Wild West, I guess. Guess we'll find out. All right, let's talk Padres-Dodgers. National League Championship Series will be Mets-Dodgers because the Dodgers took down the Padres at Dodger Stadium in Game 5. In my opinion, is the best product that the game of baseball has to offer, Padres-Dodgers. Now, a lot of people don't like to hear that. A lot of people don't agree with the point of it being a rivalry. I'm not here to say whether it's a rivalry or not. I'm here to say that a lot of the traditional baseball rivalries, they're based upon what happened 100 years ago, 50 years ago, 25 years ago. Yankees, Red Sox, there's a lot of things that have happened over the last 100, 150 years. But the way I see it, at least on TV, is I don't think the Red Sox and Yankees players hate each other, or for lack of a better word, have a large disdain for one another. If you watch Dodgers-Padres, may it be regular season, may it be playoffs, the players do not like one another. The manager, Dave Roberts of the Dodgers, is not a fan. He may respect the talent of Tatis and Machado, but you can tell he's not a huge fan of what goes on down the I-5 in San Diego. He's made multiple comments, whether it was Trent Grisham from a couple years ago, there's the Manny Machado throwing the baseball toward Dave Roberts' way. There was the Kershaw meme on the Padres scoreboard from a couple years ago. Like, these teams do not like one another. And so for that reason, I'm not here to say that it's the best rivalry in sports. I'm not even here to say that it's a rivalry, because people have different definitions of rivalry. I truly understand the definition being based on tradition. Yankees, Red Sox, Cardinals, Cubs, Cowboys, Eagles for the NFL. I get that. So I'm not here to define the word rivalry. I'm here to say that at least over the last 5 years, Padres, Dodgers have faced each other 3 times in the playoffs. Twice the Dodgers have won, once the Padres have taken down the Dodgers. And all 3 times, the entertainment product is, in my opinion, the best to watch on baseball. So I'm not here to say it's a rivalry. All I'm here to say is that from an entertainment perspective, I would rather watch a game where the current players, the current fan bases, the current front office members don't get along with one another, because the product right now is going to be better. So yes, Yankees, Red Sox, the Babe Ruths, the DiMaggios, whatever, like the old timers. There's a lot of history, and I'm not here to say that it doesn't matter. It's not at all what I'm saying. All I'm saying is that from me right now here in 2024, I want to watch players that don't like each other right now. And that seems to be the case with San Diego and Los Angeles. Next bullet point I have is Joe Davis is awesome. Play-by-play broadcaster for both Fox Sports and Sportsnet LA. A lot of criticism was going his way at the start of this Padres-Dodgers series. And I get it. San Diego fans were upset because Joe Davis was going to be play-by-play on the national broadcast. Joe Davis is the everyday play-by-play broadcaster for the Dodgers broadcast during the regular season. And so Padre fans were upset. There's going to be bias. There's going to be partial views. Let me play this video here. And the clip that you're first going to hear is the home run that Tatis hit in Game 3 in San Diego. The second clip that you're going to hear is the Game 5 home run from Kike Hernandez. Both of these calls are from Joe Davis. And you tell me which has more energy or which has more bias.
On an 0-2 pitch, a missile. Fernando Tatis Jr. electric. So the base is wiped clean, and Kike Hernandez jumps on the first one, sends a high fly ball to deep left field, and Hernandez does it again in October. Dodgers strike first.
To me, same exact energy, very similar in calls, and Joe does a phenomenal job of playing off the crowd work as well. He makes the call on the home run, and then he kind of lets the stadium noise do the rest. It's the same call, and a lot of people, they're looking for things. Fans in San Diego, in particular, were looking for things to say, things were unfair. Joe Davis is one of the best in the game. Joe Buck got so much criticism for years because he was always the guy on national TV, football and baseball. And so he got a lot of criticism. And I personally was a big Joe Buck fan. If you don't agree, that's your prerogative. But if you think that Joe Davis being the play-by-play broadcaster for the series was, I don't know, distasteful or unfit, that's fine. But to say that he was at all impartial during the series would be incorrect. He provided as much energy and as much, bias on both sides of the ball. He talked very highly of Tatis, talked very highly of Darvish Game 5 when he was pitching a gem. And then equally, he was talking highly of Kike in Game 5 and Ohtani, of course. So Joe Davis is great. And anybody that thinks that the game was swung any sort of way, at least from the media, at least on the broadcast side of things. I even saw people saying that, if anybody had any sort of bias on the broadcast. It was almost John Smoltz, who played for the Dodgers, I think, for a portion of his career, right? Obviously, a longtime Brave. Is he with the Dodgers? No, I made that up. At any rate, Joe Davis is great. Dodgers pitchers were close to perfect in that game 5. Dodgers-Padres might be the 2 best teams in Major League Baseball, but the way that the tournament is set up, it's going to be Mets-Dodgers. Do I think the Padres are a better team than the Mets? Do I think the Dodgers are a better team than the Mets? On paper, maybe, but the Mets are as hot of a team as ever. I thought the Phillies were a better team on paper than the Mets, but that's the way baseball works out. One more thing about San Diego before we move on is they're still winning at life, because 5 years ago, nobody was talking about San Diego. Nobody was showing up to the ballpark. Their attendance was, I think, 15th in the league. Their payroll was middle of the pack at best, depending on the year, depending on if they were truly wanting to compete. And then Peter Seidler, rest in peace, took over this ball club, invested into the team, got Manny Machado signed long-term. AJ Preller traded for Fernando Tatis Jr., extended him long-term, signed Xander Bogaerts, signed Darvish, signed extended Musgrove. I mean, San Diego had, I want to say, it was 3rd best attendance in Major League Baseball here in 2024. So, yeah, they came up short, but just remember, like, it's disappointing now, but remember just how bad things were 6 years ago in San Diego, and now San Diego is a destination. It's a baseball lifestyle down there. So San Diego, 1, you get to live in San Diego. 2, your baseball team still rocks, and the environment at Petco Park is amazing. All right, we can move on to the American League here. It's going to be Yankees Guardians in the American League Championship Series after the Cleveland Guardians, thanks to Lane Thomas and his game-winning grand slam, was able to propel the Guardians over Detroit. Before moving ahead, I just want to look back at Detroit and just be like, man, what a season for them. At 0.2% playoff odds or chance at the trade deadline, or 2 weeks after the MLB trade deadline, they traded away their starting catcher in Carson Kelly. They traded away their number 2 starting pitcher in Jack Flaherty. They traded away one of their best relief pitchers in Andrew Chafin over to Texas. I mean, they were hanging it up. They held on to Tarek Skubal, thank goodness, as I suggested they do, because he's under team control for another couple of years, which means Detroit's going to be even better next year and is going to be even more competitive next season. But the fact that Detroit was able to go on the run that they did with an active payroll of $33.2 million, the 28th highest active payroll in Major League Baseball. The only ones below that were like the Pirates and A's or something like that. Ridiculous. This can kind of put things into perspective as well. The 2024 Detroit Tigers highest paid players. This is according to SpotTrack. Javi Baez is making $25 million this year. Season-ending injury. He was not on the roster in the playoffs. Kenta Maeda, second highest paid player on the Tigers, $14 million. He was left off the playoff roster. Jack Flaherty, $9.3 million. He was traded. Miguel Cabrera, $8 million. He's the, fourth highest paid player in Detroit this year. He retired a year ago. Mark Canha was traded to San Francisco midseason, $7.7 million. Shelby Miller was released, $3.1 million. And the aforementioned Andrew Chafin, $2.88 million. He was traded over to Texas. So the top, 7? The 7 highest paid players on the 2024 Detroit Tigers this year were not on the roster come playoff time. And yet they were able to win a playoff series over Houston, a team that had made the ALCS in, I think, 7 straight years or something like that. So of all the teams that tried to topple the Houston Astros, it was the Detroit Tigers and their $33.2 million payroll. Their 7 highest paid players, not even on the roster. One more note on the Tigers. They won game 3, I think it was, in Detroit. Yeah, it was game 3 in Detroit, using 6 different pitchers. They used Montero, Herter, Brieske, Gunther, Vest, and Holton. It was a Johnny Holstat type situation. It didn't have a true starting pitcher, so they used just a bunch of relief arms. They won that game with 6 different pitchers. Montero, Herter, Brieske, and Gunther, they all started this season in the minor leagues. So that's 4 of the 6 pitchers they used. 4 of the 6 pitchers they used, they started the year in the minor leagues. The other 2 pitchers they used in that game was Vest and Holton. Each of those guys were each claimed off of waivers in years prior. So they used 6 pitchers. 4 of them started in the minors. 2 of them were released from other teams in years prior and picked up for pennies on the dollar by Detroit. And they were able to win a playoff game at home using those pitchers. Hell of a job, Detroit. Hell of a job. Let's take a look at the payrolls of the remaining teams, though, now that Detroit is out of the playoffs, because Cleveland doesn't exactly have a high one. Active MLB payrolls among remaining playoff teams and players. According to Spot Track, Yankees at $260.2 million. The Mets, $186.5 million. Dodgers at $171.9 million. And the Cleveland Guardians at $50.8 million. Again, those are active payrolls. That is not opening day payrolls. If you do look at opening day payrolls, Yankees and Mets, I should say Mets and Yankees in that order, are 1, 2. And the Dodgers, because a lot of their deferred money, are top 5. And the Cleveland Guardians are, I think, 22nd, 23rd, somewhere in that ballpark. But active payrolls right now, the Guardians are at 50.8. They're going to be facing off against the New York Yankees with a $260 million active payroll. And of course, Aaron Judge this year, $40 million. That's his salary. Garrett Cole is $36 million. Again, the Guardians at 50.8 as an entire team. Shohei Ohtani, deferred money, but still the salary. He'll eventually get it. He's actually making $70 million this season alone with his salary. So Ohtani will make more money this year than the entire active roster that the Cleveland Guardians are putting out on the field. Lindor also $32 million. Kind of puts things in perspective. Here's the tough part for me, though, is we do this every single year. Rinse and repeat. So come March, this is what we do. Oh, Cleveland didn't spend any money. Tampa Bay didn't spend any money. Oakland didn't spend any money. What do we do in Pittsburgh? Sell the team, Bob Nutting. They spent $3 on free agents. They signed one free, like we do this every single year. And then October comes around and Tampa Bay is in the playoffs. Cleveland's in the playoffs. We see Oakland in the playoffs quite a bit. Not so much Pittsburgh, at least not recently. But we see these teams that have low payrolls, and then come September, come October, after criticizing these teams for not investing in their roster, September comes around, October comes around, and we're like, oh my God, what an unbelievable story. This team with a $40 million payroll, and Aaron Judge is making more than their entire team, and they're going to face the New York Yankees. What an incredible story. It's unbelievable. Baseball is the absolute best. You can't have it both ways. That's a bit hypocritical to me. We can't celebrate the teams that we just criticized at the beginning of the season. We can't celebrate in October for the same reason we criticized them in March. It's hypocritical to me. So for me, as much as I love the story of the Detroit Tigers and like the players themselves, I personally am happy that the high payroll teams, Yankees, Mets, Dodgers, are in the LCS this year, because these are organizations that are investing in a ball club. It is hard enough convincing these owners to spend a little dough on these players. Yeah, I'm looking at you, John Fisher and Bob Nutting. It is hard enough. And it didn't matter how much you try to convince them, they still don't spend money on their roster, seemingly. And so if we see a Detroit Tigers, if we see a Cleveland Guardians, if we see these teams hoist a trophy, a Tampa Bay Rays, if we see one of these small market, so-called, quote unquote, hoist a trophy, it is going to decentivize spending money on a roster. And these owners that are already unwilling to dip into their pockets are going to be even more unwilling to dip into their pockets if they see another team have success with a low payroll. If we see Detroit win it all this year, which again, it was a great story. happy for the players. But if we saw Detroit win the World Series with a $33.2 million active payroll, you think front offices are going to be spending money in free agency? You think owners are going to be like, yeah, let's invest in a ball club after just seeing another team win the whole damn thing while spending $33 million? Absolutely not. And I don't think that spending $300 million on a roster guarantees you a World Series, nor does it guarantee you a playoff spot. We'll actually get into that a little bit deeper next. But it's got to be a balance. I think the Dodgers are the best organization in baseball. Their ability to develop players at the farm system, trade for players either at the deadline or in the offseason, and then also spend money in free agency. I think the Dodgers do it as good as any. But they don't have the highest payroll this year. They're top 5. We saw last year the Mets didn't make the playoffs with the highest payroll. The Padres didn't make the playoffs last year with a top 3 payroll. But my point is this: it's got to be a balance, developing players, spending money. I am rooting for teams like Yankees, Dodgers, Mets because I like to root for ownerships that actually invest in ball clubs. That's my argument. Doesn't mean that the Guardians, like, it doesn't mean I'm rooting against them per se, but like if you were to tell me, like, all right, which front office are you rooting for? Cleveland's at the bottom. I'm rooting for the player. Love Jose Ramirez. Love Lane Thomas. Love, Bieber's on the IL, obviously. Love Shane Bieber. Emmanuel Clase is probably the best closer in baseball, or at least has been over the last few years. I like the players. Van base is great, but at a certain point, we have to root for ownership, or at least we have to make a decision on which owner we would like to see hoist a trophy. That brings me to my next and final point here, is what this 2024 MLB postseason has taught me, or at least reasserted for me, is that an MLB general manager front office job might be the most difficult job in sports. Think about it. In the NFL, to compare it to other sports, in the NFL, to have success as a team, all you have to do is get the quarterback right. And I don't mean to like delegitimize the job. I'm not saying it's easy to find the right quarterback. I'm not saying it's a guarantee every first round quarterback you get, he's going to take you to the promised land. But in the NFL, if you get the quarterback right, 1, you'll be a competitive ball club. 2, you have a very, very good shot at making the playoffs and even possibly going on to win a Super Bowl. In the NFL, as a general manager, your number 1 job, get the quarterback right. If you do that, good things happen. National Basketball Association, the NBA. You don't even have to get the position right. You just have to get the player right. It's positionless basketball. LeBron James plays point guard, shooting guard, small forward, center. Like, it doesn't really matter. He plays all 5 positions. Wemby, I mean, what position is he? He shoots threes, but he's 7'6". Kevin Durant, nobody knows what position he plays. So in the NBA, you don't even have to get the position right. In the NFL, at least you have to get the quarterback right. And then you can work on the offensive line. You work on the defense. You get complementary parts in the NFL. But in the NBA, you just have to get the player right. If he's a small forward, so be it. If he's a center, so be it. We'll build around that player. It doesn't really matter what position he is. In the NBA, as a front office and general manager, just get the player right. And when you don't, it can be a disaster, but you just have to get the player right. It doesn't even matter what the position is. I'm not really sure how it works in hockey as much. Like, I'm a Sharks fan, but we just had the number 1 overall pick this last year as well. So hopefully things turn around, but I'm not totally sure the success rate on getting the player right, position right. So I don't know about hockey. But Major League Baseball, because there's 9 players on the field, and that doesn't include the 5 starting pitchers and the 12 relievers that you have, you can get the player right, you can get the position right, you can get the roster right, and you can still lose and come up short. Now, we've seen that in the NFL and the NBA too. Like, we've seen the Los Angeles Chargers, or maybe it was the San Diego Chargers in 2010, did the number 1 rated offense and defense, but their special teams was just terrible. And they actually missed the playoffs despite having the number 1 offense, number 1 defense. That was in 2010. So it happens. And they had Phillip Rivers, a good quarterback. So it does happen. But in Major League Baseball, we see it every single year. Last year, New York Mets, highest payroll in Major League Baseball, like we just kind of talked about. Highest payroll in Major League Baseball last year. The Mets missed the playoffs. San Diego Padres last year, third highest payroll in Major League Baseball. They had Juan Soto. They got rid of Juan Soto, and they were actually better this year with a lower payroll and a Juan Soto-less roster. Make that make sense. The New York Mets, let's go back to them. But 2 years ago, 3 years ago, they had Verlander, Scherzer, and DeGrom. And yes, they dealt with injuries. But you're telling me that that roster on paper isn't going to do as well as Luis Severino, Sean Manaea, an injured Kodai Senga? Make that make sense. So in Major League Baseball, front office job, like it's one of the dream jobs for a lot of us baseball nerds. Like we'd all love to do it. But man, it would be so frustrating to have the payroll, such as the Dodgers. You know, their one World Series victory was 2020, and we all know the context. It was a 60-game season, so a lot of people think that it delegitimizes the title, but they do everything right. Their farm system was ranked near the top every single year. Their culture is constantly, they do a player rating and Yelp reviews essentially every single year in the farm system. The Dodgers are ranked near the top. They take care of their players. They're progressive as well. Like the way that they take care of their bodies. They have nutritionists. I know they're minor league players. They're given resources that a lot of other farm systems aren't given to take care of their bodies and stay healthy. The Dodgers do it as good as any. And then they also have a payroll near the top. And they also have some of the best players in baseball and a really good front office. And Andrew Friedman, coaching staff is phenomenal. And then you got Betts and Freeman and Ohtani. And we'll see if the Dodgers are able to complete the journey and hoist that trophy. But the Dodgers are, in my opinion, again, the best organization in baseball. And even they have come up short every single year. What is it? 11 straight titles? Or 11 straight playoff appearances, I think it is. 10 straight, or 10 out of the last 11 division titles for the Dodgers. And even they have come up short in the playoffs. MLB front office might be the most difficult job in sports because you can do everything right. You can do everything right in free agency. You can do everything right at the farm system level. You can do everything right at the trade deadline. And you might not even make playoffs. Makes no sense. Cleveland got rid of Francisco Lindor. Still competitive. I talked about that. The Yankees, I guess the Yankees are kind of the same roster as they have been, but who else made the playoffs this year? Let's go. Talked about the Tigers. Orioles, kind of the same ball club. Houston, a little bit different. I was actually rooting for Kansas City this year, just simply because they actually were investing in a roster this year, at least more so than compared to previous seasons. Like they extended Bobby Witt Jr. They went out and got Seth Lugo and Hunter Renfroe. Like I was rooting for the Royals because, yeah, it's a little bit lower of a payroll, but relatively speaking, Kansas City actually spent money this year. Let's see, Atlanta dealt with injuries this year, but the point stands is that I think being a general manager in Major League Baseball might be the most difficult job of any front office in sports. NBA, NFL, maybe even hockey. I don't know, but MLB playoffs have been fun. I have certain arguments to make about, and this might upset some people, but I have certain arguments to make on when the playoffs, when the postseason should take place. I personally believe if you had the postseason in August, the exposure for baseball would be through the roof because I think these playoffs have been phenomenal. If you're missing out on the MLB playoffs, you're missing out on some incredible, incredible entertainment. Starting with the Mets Braves series to get into the playoffs when Lindor hit the game-winning home run in the ninth. Mets Brewers Alonso game-winning home run in the ninth to advance to the NLDS. Lindor, it's a recurring theme. Lindor grand slam against the Phillies to move on to the NLCS. Dodgers-Padres had all the drama. All the drama. That was good from start to finish. Guardians-Tigers went the length 5 games and was very entertaining. Took a game-winning grand slam from Lane Thomas against Tarek Skubal. Yankees-Royals, there was drama in New York when it came to instant replay. Every series has had drama and every series has been entertaining. And as far back as I can remember, born in 1996. So take that as you will. Probably the most entertaining MLB playoff that I can remember in recent memory. So imagine if you had this postseason in August when there ain't shit to watch other than the Little League World Series. I'll just tease the next episode a little bit because there's a lot that goes into that argument, and I don't want to, I want to give it the attention it deserves, and I want to get the mathematics right for you guys. But appreciate you guys tuning into the Wake and Rake podcast. A little bit shorter episodes. Again, this is more of a sounding board now. If you want to rock with us, rock with us. If you don't, that's totally cool. I'll be here on a weekly basis. We'll see what else we can do with the podcast. But as of right now, we're going to keep it going because we've spent too much time, energy. And I know that there's a lot of people that do listen to us and have been looking for episodes. So hope to jump back on here soon. At any rate, enjoy the ALCS, NLCS. Mets Dodgers is going to be fun. Guardians Yankees. There's already, you had the drama with Miles Straw in the outfield and Josh Naylor a couple of years ago rocking the baby against Garrett Cole. So I'm looking forward to it. We'll be here along the way. Talk to you guys soon. Peace.